Welcome to the Faith Talks Wood podcast. I'm Will from Fly Woodworks.
And I'm Tom from Mountain Valley Maker.
And we're a podcast that talks about everything from Jesus to joinery and a little bit of everything in between. Tom, look, I sit in an office. My job is behind a desk, right? I work with my mind. I rest with my hands, right? Well, I about done overdid it this weekend. Today is, what is today? Monday. Getting my days all mixed up. I was in a conference all last week, and then today's Monday, so I was off today. And so anyway, Sunday, yesterday, my brother-in-law's fiance and her son moved the rest of their stuff from Tennessee up here to Pennsylvania. And so my father-in-law drove down and helped them, and they brought 3 truck and trailer loads back up. Yeah. And so, and I'm talking, one was a 3 or 4 horse trailer, one was a dump trailer, and one was my 12-foot trailer. And so I, after church, come home, got a quick sandwich, and then went down. They're about 30 minutes south of us is where their farm is at. And I helped them unload. And let me just say, I got an office body, man. I was feeling it. It ended up being a nice day. And so took some ibuprofen before bed last night and got up this morning and spent all day outside. I know I've talked about it for months now, but the coop is basically done. And so we'll talk more about that during our shop talk. But so I was outside all day today. Then I mowed the grass and just got a bunch of stuff done, and I'm feeling it. It feels good to feel it, but I am definitely feeling it. So how's your weekend been?
It's good. I told you I borrowed my neighbor's
Oh yeah, you get that done?
Well, I got all the excavator work done, but I'm going across where the electric, where the cable, where the gas and water all.
Yeah, you won't hit none of that.
No. So, of course, I had 811 come out, mark everything, and they tell you 18 to 24 inches from their line. I didn't, so I've got to hand dig all that out. I exposed the cable and the electric, so I still got the water. I won't get down to. It's far enough down below the frost line, but then I got to hand dig out around the gas line.
Are you on city water?
Yes.
Oh, really?
Yep.
Interesting. I thought you'd be on well out that far.
No, I'm only a mile outside the city limits of Palisades, so I'm in the county. But
okay.
right where we live, we all have fantastic water. Is just fantastic. All of our water comes off of a lake from up on so it's all snow melt. That comes off the Grand Mesa, and it's fantastic, man. I drink it right out the tap. Yeah.
We don't drink the water here. Our well is 148 feet deep.
Oh wow!
And it's really it's not the sulfur. Like you've went to places with well and it smells like rotten eggs.
Yep.
Ours doesn't quite smell like that. It has a similar kind of smell to it, but we filter our water before we drink it here, just because. I mean, it's probably fine to just drink, but yeah. Definitely, it's not mountain spring water. That's for sure.
Yeah. Well, and I should say, I get mine out the refrigerator, so it technically
Which is filtered.
has a filter,
same here.
But I drink it out the sink all the time too. I don't care.
Right.
It's good.
Yeah. That's cool. Now, when you doing this French drain, and you come across your gas lines and stuff, or you're gonna be above it, right?
Well, the cable and the gas line, I will be below it. The electric and the water, I'll be above it, because they put the water 4 foot below. Mm-hmm. The electric is supposed to be at 3 foot, but they tell you, because of the soil here, 24 to 36 inches, somewhere in that range is where it's at. Yeah. And then but typically they say 30 to 36 inches on the electric. The gas is at about 2 foot, and then cables at 1 foot. So
right. Yeah. It's It's funny. So obviously we have electric here. We live around Amish, but we're not Amish. And then we had Windstream DSL, but we got rid of that for Starlink. And then we've got propane for our heat. And we have a big 500-gallon propane tank behind the house. And I called them and I said, hey, probably this summer or this fall, I'm going to build a deck. And I could see kind of where that line goes. Can you guys come out and mark it? He's like, no, it's plastic. We can't find it. He says, a lot of times you see it go to the ground, do a straight shot from where it is to where it goes in your house, and you're going to find it in there. And I'm like, oh, that's great. So I'm going to have to hand dig probably my one far post I put down. But so anywho, otherwise I'll be using the tractor with the 3-point because, hydraulics.
Amen. Love me some hydraulics.
Yeah. What's funny is that so while I was out back working on the duck coop, my wife was out front. We've got this, of course, we bought the house, I said bought the house used like it's a car. We're not the original owners of the house. And they have this really cool like rock garden. They've got a rock out there. It's half buried in the ground. So it's probably the size of like a Mini Cooper, honestly. And then there's 4 or 5 smaller rocks around it. And it was overgrown when we moved here and we've trimmed it down and stuff. And she finally went out there and started weeding it. And I go out, I mowed after I got done with the coop and I go past, I'm like, wow, she really did a number to this thing. But then she told me her plan afterwards is that she wants to plant grass kind of in front of it and not have as much. Cause it was like at one point they had railroad ties around it and all the stuff. And she's like, I don't want that much stuff. And so I do have a back blade, so I'm going to have to use the back blade to kind of smooth some of that out. And I just didn't have time today. So much going on. Busy. But speaking of busy, did you see, before we get into the rest of the podcast, that Phil Robertson died?
No.
The duck guy.
I knew that he had, I think he had cancer or something. Alzheimer's. But, that's sad, man. What an awesome dude, man. But
yep, unashamed of his faith and willing to, And
if you haven't seen that movie about him,
dude, I don't think I have. No,
dude, it is phenomenal, absolutely phenomenal movie. And so it's basically his testimony made out into a movie, and
okay,
it is phenomenal. He was a drunk alcoholic and then abusive to his wife, and then the Lord got hold of him and he had a bar, literally like owned a tavern or whatever you want to call it, and his wife had left him, and I can't remember what, I think it was her sister or his sister that brought a pastor to his bar, and he came in and shared the gospel with him, and he ignored it. And then his wife ended up leaving him. And long story short, through all that, he ended up getting on fire for the Lord. And then, of course, became a pastor and, and then, of course, built Duck Dynasty. And Duck Dynasty was a fluke, like how they started it and all. And, but yeah, man, but his sons, like he raised you're talking about a quiver of children that are on fire for the Lord. Like every last one of his kids and grandkids are in the ministry somehow. And, I love Willie Robertson, man. Oh my gosh. And if you haven't read his book, Gospeller, it is absolutely phenomenal. But yeah.
Yeah. I've watched, his granddaughter, Sadie. She has a podcast.
Yeah.
And I've listened to her podcast, and she's had some really good guests and had some really, really, raw conversations. I appreciate, what she's doing. So awesome. Well, before we get into the guests today, just want to say thank you to the patron supporters. You guys are awesome. If you want to support us on Patreon, you can do so at patreon.com/faithtalkswood. And then thank you for everybody that gives a 5-star. Every once in a while, I'll get on and I can actually, look at all the ratings on the podcast, and you all give us all 5 stars. We had one person give us 1 star, and I wish we could reach out to them and say, what didn't you like? It's probably my voice or something. I don't know. But thank you guys for rating us over there. And if you need any sanding equipment, Surf Prep has partnered with the podcast. Get 10% off at your surfprepsanding.com on your order. Use code FAITH. And thank you guys for purchasing stuff over there. Tom, who's on the podcast today? Although everybody knows it because it's on the title, but
yeah, man, I'm gonna tell you what. So Dan, one of his, I'm gonna call it works of art, popped up on my Instagram feed, and anybody that knows me knows that in the winter I'm on the snow, and in the summer I'm on the water. I love to paddleboard. I love to kayak. I love to canoe. Anything to do with it, and I love art. Well, Dan just happens to make these works of art that could be used as a canoe paddle. And if I had one, I'd probably be scared to put it in the water. They're so beautiful. But if you have not checked out his stuff, man, you have got to go see him. But Dan Hensch, man, welcome to the podcast, brother.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Tell us a little bit about yourself.
I was raised in Cedar Rapids, Iowa. Lived there till I was about 21 years old. Big into sports. I played a lot of baseball, a lot of football. Met my wife when we were 15 years old. And she had just moved to the area. Started going to the church that I went to, and started dating right away. And this August, we'll celebrate our 31st year of marriage. So we've been together for a few years. And after we got married, we lived in Cedar Rapids for a couple more years, moved out to Bismarck, North Dakota for a couple of years. And then now we live in a little town called Pequot Lakes, Minnesota, which is just north of Brainerd, a few hours north of Minneapolis. And we live on a 150-acre farm, which we own 15 acres of it. But her family owns the rest of it. So it's great to get to use it, and I don't have to pay taxes on it. So we have like 25 acres of row crop, which we rent out to a farmer. And then we have a lot of woods and pasture land that my in-laws rent out to horses. And then we have somebody that comes and hays it. And basically I've been enjoying my time up here, and as a lot of people call it, God's country. So, but yeah, that's pretty much kind of my life, a little bit of the life history. So
that's awesome. Absolutely.
Well, man, so the name of the podcast is Faith Talks Wood. So tell us about your relationship to Jesus, how that came to be, and where it's brought you to now.
Yeah, absolutely. I was raised Baptist. I was basically born into a Baptist family. My grandma helped start the nursery program in her church, which ended up being the church that I went to. And then when I would say probably 8 years old, we outgrew that building. And so they started building another building. And I remember going out, and even at that young of an age, helping out with my dad with the construction of the new church. It was during the winter time, and one vivid memory that I can remember is we were. This obviously was big before OSHA, so like we wouldn't have been let on the work site at that age. We were shoveling off the roof. Most of it was a flat roof, so we were shoveling it off. And of course, what do kids do when there's a big pile of snow down below a roof? You jump off. So my brother and I spent hours just going and running and jumping off of the roof of the church. So besides my grandma being real involved in the church, both my parents were very involved in the church too. My dad was either a deacon or on the board of trustees, basically depending on what the rotation was. He'd be a deacon until it was his time to get off of it. Then he would get on the board of trustees and then do maintenance on the building and stuff, and then go back onto being a deacon. He was involved in choir, the men's ministry, basketball. They'd have a Monday night basketball open gym. So I spent a lot of time at the church. And I would have to say that I came to know the Lord. I made my public profession of faith at about 9 years old. I didn't really know what it meant at the time. It was more of my family's faith than mine. And I basically went to church most of the time for the wrong reasons. I went to hang out with friends, hang out with buddies. It was before Awana, we had Brigade and Pioneer Girls. So, of course, the Brigade part was a lot of doing stuff outside, horseback riding, learning to shoot a bow, all that kind of stuff, So I enjoyed doing that. So I kept on going because it was fun. I really didn't get much out of the messages, I screwed around, got in trouble. I was one of the kids sitting in back that the preacher would stop and he'd stare at you, and you knew what that meant, that you were getting in trouble when you got home. So I went basically just because my parents took me. Got into junior high and high school. And of course, at 15, when Deb, my wife, started going to our church, then that gave me a different reason to go to church. Since we started dating, dated all the way through high school, kind of the same thing. Didn't really get much out of church, but then we had this one youth pastor that I don't remember anything he preached, but I remember how he treated people. And I remembered how he would always treat people with respect. He tried breaking up all the cliques and stuff that were in our youth group. And because of him, it made me want to continue to go to church, even if Deb wasn't going to be there. So he was a person, and I was actually able to find him later in life and call him and talk to him and tell him how much he pushed me towards that just by the way that he acted. So then we got married, lived in Bismarck, didn't really go to church in Bismarck. Didn't find a church that we really enjoyed there. And then moved here to Minnesota and got tied in with a Baptist church. And we really got tied in really well. It was mostly at the prodding of my wife, keep on pushing and pushing for us to go to church. And that's when I got more involved in church. I was asked by one of the Christian education ladies if I could teach a Sunday school class. And I told her no. I just didn't even think about it, just said no. And walked over to my wife, and my wife's like, what did she want? I was like, she wanted to know if I wanted to teach a Sunday school class. And she's like, what did you tell her? I said, I told her no. And she goes, did you pray about it? I said, no, I don't want to do it. So she convinced me to pray about it, and I prayed about it. And I'm like, you know what? I'm not feeling God pushing me either way, but what could it hurt? So I volunteered and started teaching. I think it was a 9th grade Sunday school class. And for the most part, there was only 2 kids that would normally show up for it. Both of them were girls. And I realized that if I wanted to make a difference in their life, it would have to be more than an hour a week. So I ended up volunteering and helping out on Wednesday nights. So I started helping out on Wednesday nights. Then I got involved in the youth group. I did forget to tell in my personal story, we don't have any kids. At that time, we didn't really want to have kids until we were probably in our mid to late 30s. And then we both of us found out we had reproductive issues and weren't able to have children. So it was kind of God's foreshadowing, like, hey, let's get you involved with the youth because I know you're not going to have any of your own. So we started I started helping out with the youth group. Hence, my wife came in and she helped out with the youth group as well. And I helped out with the youth group for probably close to 9 to 10 years. And at the Baptist church, I was actually wanting to help out, but just happened to be that one of the leaders was getting married, so she wanted to step down. One of the other guys was going to school, so he was going to step down. So it left me, was the only person basically to we didn't have a youth pastor, and so I was the only person that was available that wanted to help out with the youth. So I didn't like preaching, I didn't like teaching, but I liked the relationship side of it. So I muddled through it, and one of the girls that was the first kid in our Sunday school class, I still have a relationship with her. She lives in Florida now. Her name is Karika, and she has 2 kids now. The kids call us Oma and Opa, and so she's kind of the non-adopted child. And in fact, they'll be coming up for the 4th of July to spend it with us this summer. And pretty much now we've changed churches and gone to was a non-denominational, then joined the Evangelical Free Church. And we've been involved with that church quite a bit. And I'm not on the tech side of it, but I do have a buddy that does a lot of our technical work, that actually lives down in the cities, and is a lighting producer for Eagle Brook, the largest church in Minnesota. And he comes up and helps us out with our tech stuff. I used to be an electrician, so I can get wires from point A to point B really well, but I know how nothing works. I just know that he needs this wire pulled from point A to point B, and I'll get it there for him. So that's kind of my faith story, and I probably didn't transition over into being my faith until probably we moved here to Minnesota. So that's when it became more of my faith, and I put more of my trust in God than living off of kind of what my parents had built. So I probably left some stuff out, but
yeah. That's awesome. Yeah, it's God works in, they say mysterious ways, in crazy ways where, you guys can't have kids, but he's put kids in your life that see you at probably as mother and father figures that it's amazing how he does that. And funny enough, you're the second guest that's an E-free
your last guest was too.
Yeah. Who's the last guest? I
can't remember the name. I know he's from Pennsylvania.
Danielle.
Who is that?
Danielle.
Was it? I think it might have been. No. Oh no, is Chris Ricketts.
Oh yeah. Yep.
Yeah, Chris is E-free. My father-in-law is E-free, or my in-laws are E-free. So basically Baptist, but not really.
Yeah, we have a better website.
Right, Baptist with a cool website. I love it. Tim Hawkins.
No, basically what it was is kind of when everybody was starting to get Sue happy. We were kind of out on an island on our own, and found that joining the E-Free Church gave us a little bit of backing, but also gave us some educational materials for our pastors and for our staff. And we didn't really have to change anything in our teachings. So it fit exactly in where we needed it. So
good. So are you guys a smaller church then?
Yeah, normally between, I would say 150, 200 people.
Yeah.
So
yeah.
So it's a little bit smaller church and smaller community. The town is probably 1,500, 1,600 people. And we live like 8 miles outside of town. So
yeah.
That's nice.
Yeah, that's awesome. We live in we live outside of town as well. Closest gas station is 10 miles from my house, but
same here.
Yeah, it's actually kind of nice, not gonna lie. But our church is in a town of about 800, and we're about 120 to 150 people a week kind of church. So, and we came from a church of 10,000 in Tennessee, so it's seen both sides of it. But that's awesome. So you would say that once you guys moved to Minnesota, that's kind of where you started getting serious about your faith. Any specific things that had happened that maybe kind of drew you in, or anything like that?
Not really. It was just, I think it was God's timing. Right. My wife has grown up in a Baptist church, and a different church, obviously, before she moved to Iowa. But she was pushing quite hard for us to go to church when we moved up here. And so then once I started going to church, then the head knowledge started coming a little bit, and then the heart knowledge kind of followed up with it. And then there's just a few things that happen that I couldn't explain, that the only explanation for it is God, is him putting words into my mouth in certain situations. I had one guy from our church that told us that we weren't living godly lives because we weren't raising children. And that really turned me off. And normally I'm a person, when I get angry, I get upset, my brain doesn't function very well. So I just shut my mouth and just let it go. In this instance, God spoke through me. I didn't hear his audible voice, but I said something that I don't know where it came from. He basically said that, well, you guys aren't living godly lives because you aren't raising children. And I asked him, where in the Bible does it say to raise your own godly children? It doesn't. It just says raise godly children. So I was helping out with the youth group. So I was helping raise godly children. And it was something for me that really bothered me that he said that, but it was God speaking through me, because it wasn't something I would normally say.
Absolutely. That's the Holy Spirit, my friend. Well, yes. I love it.
First of all, in the Bible, it says some people are to get married and some are not. So, and it clearly says not to commit adultery. So if you're not called to get married, then how are you going to raise your own godly children? So that right there rebukes, because obviously, and then there are some people who cannot have children.
Yes.
Because of their bodies. So I can't believe some of the stuff, and I hate to say it, but when people say stuff like that, no wonder people that are not Christians don't want to come to the faith.
Absolutely.
I mean, it really, and I call that being church hurt, and I had things like that happen to me in the past as well that kind of pushed me away from the church for a while. But it just goes to show that how powerful our words are.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Yes. Yeah. And, some of those hardcore Baptist circles, they hold childbearing is almost salvific. I do know that. Kind of like there's some that are like King James only. You don't read the King James Bible, you're not reading the real Bible, and you're not therefore not saved, that kind of stuff. And that just goes, right now I'm teaching our Sunday school through the book of Galatians, and, Paul is hitting pretty hard on not applying works to your, salvation. It's by grace through faith alone. And so I've been in that headspace lately, but that's awesome. So you guys are involved now, and so do you help out with any other areas of ministry or church?
Not really. I was on essentially the board of trustees. I don't remember what they call it now, but it was basically just a board that dealt with the daily dealings of the church. Right. And I was on that for probably, well, until I couldn't be on it anymore. So I was on that for probably 6-8 years, something like that. We do go to a Wednesday night study that we do. It's kind of on the back burner right now because everybody's been real busy. But we meet at somebody's house, and it's 3 different families, and we just meet and do kind of our own marriage class there on Wednesday nights. During the wintertime, when I get laid off from my job, I work for an irrigation company. So in the winter times, it's hard to put irrigation in somebody's yard when it's frozen.
Right.
And during that, I have a little bit more time, so I end up helping out at the church a little bit more.
Right.
During that, but always been pretty handy. So when there's stuff that needs to be built, stuff that needs to be done around there, I'm occasionally get the call to do it to help out.
Yeah, you think about irrigation being seasonal so much that your company probably has to, say, hey, until there's work.
Yes, pretty much. I get laid off from usually early November to beginning of April.
Wow.
So that's when I do my woodworking.
Right.
That's when I do a lot of my woodworking. I try to use that as a full-time job, and then just come out and work in the shop all day long.
Yeah. Now, does your job during season keep you busy enough that, it's like you're super busy during peak season, and then the downtime you can, manage?
Yeah. So like from April to usually the beginning of, sometime in the middle of June, we're really busy, working 50 to 55 hours a week. And then from that time all the way up until usually early September, then it slows down a little bit once we get all the systems fired up and going. And then mid-September, we start shutting them down. So then we're working 50 hours a week again through November. So during that middle part, there's a little bit of a respite. My wife and I are planning on taking a vacation this year in late August, early September, and heading up to Banff. Heading up to Banff up in Canada. So.
Oh, okay. I didn't know what that is. So
it's some people call it Little Alaska. It's a beautiful area up there, up in the Rocky Mountains.
Yeah. I saw your Instagram. You have a van, right? You doing the van thing?
Yep. So I built that out this year, this spring. It's not going to be lived in, but it's for vacationing. So
right. Yeah.
So normally when we go on vacation, we drive around 4,000 miles in 10 days. So
wow.
So,
that's a lot of driving.
Yep.
Funny thing about the van thing, that became big during COVID, right?
Yes.
The van life.
Mm-hmm.
One of the pastors of our church in Tennessee, the big church we went to, his sons, he had 2 sons. They decided, hey, we're handy, we're woodworkers. Let's start building out these vans. And so they started doing custom orders. And if those guys aren't killing it now, and they make some of the nicest vans out there, and now they've gotten into doing like buses and stuff. They've gotten it, they've kind of progressed in doing more than just the vans. But I remember when they started, they were just like literally pull a van in the driveway and they'd work on it, and then they were build a shop, and then they got a bigger shop, and they're that blew up for them. And then one of the other pastors, one of the worship pastors of our church, had a side cabinet business. He quit doing any custom orders for houses and did nothing but their vans.
Oh, really?
He would make all the cabinetry and all the framing for the van inserts, and that was enough to yeah. So
I ended up having a lot of wood, a lot of rough sawn wood, and then I had a lot of rough sawn pine. So then when I planed it down, I saw it was blue and buggy pine. I'm like, that's the way I got to do the whole inside of the van. So I planed that all down. I made my own shiplap. So it took a little while to make all that wood. But it turned out, in my opinion, awesome. So
yeah, absolutely. The wood behind you there. Now we don't record the video of the podcast.
Yep.
That looks like it's a circle mill.
It is.
Yeah. So my father-in-law owns a sawmill, and I know the difference between a bandsaw cut and a circle mill cut.
Yeah. So I'm in my shop right now. The wood is actually siding from my father-in-law's pastor's house. He ripped all the siding off, and then they were going to just throw it in a pile and burn it. My father-in-law was like, I'll take it. And so he took it. We split it up. I pulled the nails out of mine. He pulled the nails out of his. And this is actually the backside of the wood, the siding. The other side is stained like brown.
Right.
But on the backside of here, then I just basically hit it with 100 grit sandpaper to make the circle stand up just a little bit more. So
love it.
That's all. Only side of the wall. It's the only wall in the shop that has that wood on it. The other side in my cold storage side is the same.
Okay.
But the rest of it's all just OSB walls.
Yeah. That's the cheap way to go. I get it.
Yes. And I think it looks cool. So, and then the bottom part I trimmed out with corrugated steel, corrugated steel. So on the bottom part of it.
That's awesome. So tell us about the paddles. They're lined up behind you. I looking at your Instagram, seeing gorgeous. One question I have, being a woodworker, the first question I have is, what kind of glue are you using?
I use Type Bond 3.
You use 3, okay. Yep. And your paddles are rated to use, right? Like,
yep.
Okay.
I would have to say, out of the ones that I've sold, maybe 1% to 2% of them actually get put in the water.
Yeah, I was figuring. Yeah.
Majority of them get hung on the wall. The majority of them. So I live in Minnesota, so land of 10,000 lakes. Yeah. We have 2 big lake chains here. It's called Gull Lake Chain and the Whitefish Chain. A lot of multi-million-dollar cabins and stuff. So a lot of people will buy these to hang them up as decor in their house or in their cabins. We have a couple of customers that for the irrigation side that I've talked to, and they're like, man, you look familiar. I was like, well, I make some canoe pads. And like, here, come inside, and they'll show me where they have it hanging up. So that's always cool to see.
Oh, that's cool.
For the canoe paddles, I primarily make them out of maple, walnut, cherry, and then cedar as well.
Okay.
And most of the wood that I'm getting is actually sourced out of the cities. I started going through Yep. Basically, it's a company called Storm Trees down there. It's a little shop that he basically takes storm fallen trees or trees that are cut down by the city, and then he mills them up. It's got a kiln, he dries them, and then I go down there and pick up whenever he gets in some maple or some walnut. But I'm not obviously building them. They can be used. They're a little heavier than what a standard paddle would be because I make them out of maple, because I like the grain patterns that the maple has compared to the basswood or whatever else they use for the paddles. So the way I got into it, it started during COVID, but it wasn't a COVID starting. That's not why I started the business. I've always been fairly handy growing up. Like, my wife wanted a table. We were at a friend's house, farmhouse table. So I built that. So I've always had some rudimentary tools, the circular saw, drill, stuff like that, jigsaw around the house. So I build stuff like that. And in it would have been November of 2020, I had shoulder surgery. I had a toe rotator cuff for the second time, was prepping for the surgery, had the surgery. Not a whole lot you can do with one arm. So I started watching a lot of YouTube videos, which I enjoy watching YouTube videos. And I saw a guy make a canoe paddle, and I was like, that looked cool. So I saved it, started watching more videos on it, watching more videos. And when I was able to use both arms, I made my first canoe paddle. It took me probably between 6 and 8 hours to make the whole thing. And it looked horrible. I mean, just completely, totally horrible. I still have it. It's on the other side of my shop. But I enjoyed the process. I really enjoyed the process. I was using a lot of hand tools at the time. So I was using like a spoke shave. I was using different planes and stuff like that to shape the blade and shape the handle, using some rasps and stuff like that. And I really enjoyed the process. So I decided to make another one. In fact, the first one looked like a long-handled pizza peel, like you'd see at one of the pizza places, like Domino's or something like that. But I just kept on working at it. So I made another one, and then I thought my process was getting better. So then I decided, well, and at that time I was just using scrap wood. So then I started buying. I went to a place and bought some actual maple and some walnut and some cherry, and then made a paddle and went, man, this is really cool. I love the contrast. So then I started my business in April of 2021. So I haven't been doing it for very long. And basically I've just refined the process to where I can get them done a lot faster than the 6 to 8 hours than that took me the first time to do it. And I'm up to, I think it's about 740 paddles that I made. So
wow, that's a few paddles, man.
And I have taken 2 that I made specifically for myself and took them up to the Boundary Waters and used them for a week.
And you just started making your first paddle in 2020?
Yes. Yep.
Dude, that is like, I'm sitting here trying to do the math on, that's like 150 paddles a year you're making.
Yeah.
Wow.
So, and that's, I have a part-time, full-time job. So, it gives me a little bit of time to build up stock for the summertime when I sell majority of them. So,
yeah.
Where do you sell them at?
I do a few craft shows, do a few art shows. Primarily, I've been selling them mostly through different stores in the area. There's some of them will buy directly from me, and some of them I just consign with them. Right. And then they sell them, and I have the furthest one is down in the cities, down in Stillwater. So, but I have a few of them locally here that I sell through, and I like to make them, and I enjoy being out there at the markets and talking to people. But when people aren't buying, it's frustrating.
So are you still making them with hand tools, or have you transitioned to power tools?
Oh, the only time I use a hand tool is a sander when I get done. It's just a block, just a sanding block when I'm done. So pretty much everything I use is all power tools now. So
now the one thing that stands out about your paddles is all the amazing different designs you have. Like, they are literally works of art. So how do you come up with all these designs?
Some of them I've just popped into my head. And some of them it's like I make one that's called the Arrow that is solid on the bottom and it's got stripes up on top. And I started off making those, actually the stripes down lower. It was similar to a style that I had seen. And then I'm like, what's it going to look like if I move those stripes to the top? And so I just basically took some ideas that I had and made different variations on them. The cedar one, I make one with cedar, and of course cedar is a really soft wood. So I wanted to put like a brush guard on it or a rock guard on it. So if somebody actually uses it, it would hold up a little bit better. And then I put 3 dots on the bottom of it. And the reason why I put 3 dots on the bottom of it is because I screwed up on one paddle. and the way to cover it up was to put the dots in it. And then I liked it so much, I kept it for every paddle. So it's kind of one of those things, part of woodworking is covering up your own mistakes.
I was going to say the mark of a true craftsman is not whether or not he makes mistakes, it's how he can make you think he didn't make mistakes. And,
yes, exactly.
That's amazing, man.
And then I have a DNA one that's got curved lines that go through it. And I got that idea from Drew Fisher.
Oh, okay.
He did a cutting board like that.
Yeah.
I have to put that into a paddle. So that's what I decided to do is to make that, to make the DNA paddle is what I call it. So
that's cool.
I remember watching that video of his. I love Drew's channel. I watch about every video he puts out.
But me too. And I enjoy it. Yeah. There was another guest that you had a while ago that he had said you'd actually quoted him earlier, Will. Those that
Drew Witt.
Yeah, Drew Witt. I don't know if I'm the exception to the rule because I have a physical job during the day, and then to relax, I come home and I work in the shop. And
it's probably two different kinds of work, though, right? I mean,
oh, absolutely.
Going from digging up irrigation, running equipment, doing that kind of thing, to working with your hands, making sawdust. I mean, making sawdust is therapeutic in itself, right?
Oh, absolutely. But the designs, most of them I've taken inspiration from other things. Like I made a box joint paddle that is part walnut, part maple. And I just looked at a drawer one day and saw the box joints. I'm like, what if I turn those so they face each other and then drive them together?
I see one over your right shoulder, looks like.
Yes. Yep. That one.
Yeah.
So I came up with that design, and there's a few other designs that I have in mind that I just haven't been able to implement and to figure out. So
that's fun.
I keep on trying to expand and keep on trying to make different things. So
have you thought about getting into any like exotic type stuff and doing more, maybe this paddle costs a little bit more because it's made out of Paduke and whatever else. I don't know if you've done any of that.
I have done that. I have a paddle that I made that's got some half circles in it that are cut out that I don't have any hanging behind me, I don't think. No. And those I've made with walnut and Paduke. Sold them for a little bit more. I made one for a former pastor. He's a Ohio State Buckeye fan. So he's from Ohio, so I can't blame him. But I made him a paddle when he stepped down and decided to go into a different form of ministry. And so I made him a paddle as a going away present, and I made it out of maple and bloodwood, since it's the red and it's close to white as you can get. So so I made that for him. So I do use some exotic woods.
It gets expensive, and that stuff's messy to work with. The dust, really oily, trying to glue it.
Yep,
is no fun.
No, so like I'll try to use it sparingly. I'll use it as an accent instead of using it as the whole thing. So
right.
But yeah, I have done some stuff with some exotic woods.
Have you ever used, I think you guys have it up north there, Osage orange?
I have not.
Okay. You probably don't want to. That stuff is a pain to work with. It's just super hard. It's like working with concrete.
Yeah, the hardest stuff that I probably worked with was hickory. So
yeah. Hickory. I have a bunch of hickory, and I always I'm gonna make this picture frame out of hickory. I'm gonna make this out of hickory. And I'm about halfway through the process. I'm like, why did I make this out of hickory? This stuff sucks to sand and sucks to work with. And actually, I made a frame for my wife. So my wife is a stained glass artist, and I'll make her these frames that encapsulate like a picture that she does. And so I'll do the bottom and the sides, and then you'll slide it down, and then I'll glue the top on. And then she wanted hooks in it and to hang it. And we usually put those, in them. I mean, I'll make it out of walnut or something or maple, and it's fine. And she was doing it while I was at work, and she texted me, she's like, "Hey, you're gonna have to help me with getting this, getting these hooks into this wood. I don't know what's going on here, but they just won't go." And I just said, "LOL, that's hickory."
Yeah, I've snapped off a few hooks on those.
Oh yeah.
Yep. Oh yeah, a few of the hooks where you don't drill it quite big enough, and
you think you can turn it, and nope.
Yep, even in hard maple, it's
right.
I can snapped a few off in those. So
yeah, that's fun. Speaking of exotics, I had we were in Tennessee. This guy on Facebook was selling a couple of things, and he had this teak just butcher block top. It was 20, I think it was 24 by 24, maybe a little bit bigger than that. And I got it for like $40 from him, but it had some cracks in it. And so I ran it through the table saw and got the, where the cracks were at, and rejointed it, and then to glue it back together. I was like, why is this acting so weird? Well, teak is extremely oily because it's a super water resistant wood. Boats and stuff and paddles and whatnot use teak.
Oh yeah.
So
absolutely. That's one thing I've noticed with like Paduke and with bloodwood. You have to be really careful when you're sanding. You almost have to sand the maple and sand into the Paduke, because when you're sanding, it'll actually bring some of that pigment from the orange.
Oh yeah.
On the maple. So you have to be a little bit careful when you're sanding it and try to touch it up a little bit, because it'll actually turn the maple a little bit orange. So
interesting. Yeah, I would think about that with the oils and that would be kind of a pain. Now I saw a reel. You said you normally use boiled linseed oil, but you tried the tung oil.
Yeah.
On it. What do you find is the best oil? I mean, anything unless you're using a marine grade, conversion varnish, is going to be hard in the water for anything to last up. But what do you usually use?
I usually use the boiled linseed oil. I was trying out, some of the walrus oil, the pure tung oil, just to see how it worked and see what it looked like. It was good. I enjoyed it. I liked it. The finish looked real nice on it. I think there's with the boiled linseed oil, it's a little bit easier to apply. The tung oil isn't hard to apply either, but it's the boiled linseed oil is a little thinner, so it smears on and rubs on a little bit better. The tung oil actually, I think, gives a little bit shinier finish.
Right. Yeah, it does for sure.
And for me, my first paddle that I made, I actually varnished the whole thing and did not like the shine on it. So I literally sanded down the entire thing and put boiled linseed oil.
Gotcha.
Come to find out, what's that?
More of a matte finish.
Yeah. And I like that little bit more of a natural matte finish. And come to find out, it runs in my blood to use boiled linseed oil. I went to a family gathering last summer and was talking to some distant relatives, and I took some of my stuff to show, and that's what he used to finish. And I told them boiled linseed oil, and they all looked at each other and said, "Yep, he's a Boxwell." And so they're like, go into Uncle Lloyd's, his old boat shed, and you'll see boiled linseed oil, just gallons of it. So come to find out, it's in my blood to use it. Right. I didn't know it. So at the time,
I've actually never used boiled linseed oil.
It's very easy to apply. It worked really, really well. It raises the grain just slightly, but not too bad.
Right.
Like after the first coat, and it dries out, you can do a light sanding and then coat it. For me, I found that 2 to 3 coats is when it quits absorbing in. So but I was actually kind of surprised that I got into woodworking. I took a woodworking class when I was in junior high and hated it. Did not like it at all. I was a small kid. The teacher basically tells you that every machine in there can kill you and I was afraid of every machine. I built my mom this little goose planter thing, and it took me like the whole length of the class to make it, and I still never finished it. And I never thought I'd get into woodworking at all. It was something that wasn't on my radar at all. So, but then I found making paddles. So
that's funny. I watched a kid in junior high cut off his finger on the bandsaw, so it does happen.
It does. And I think our shop teacher was missing a couple fingers. So
right.
Hey man. So what you got going on in your shop right now? Are you able to do anything with irrigation going on?
It's been pretty busy, so I haven't been in the shop for very much for the last couple of weeks. I have been basically what's on my bench right now is actually some spatulas that I've been making. I've sold a few of them and I was running low on stock. So I make a little cowboy spatula. And that's pretty much what I've been working on. Also, I don't know how much you guys know about lefse. Have you ever heard of it?
Say that
lefse, lefse, it's spelled Lefse, but it's pronounced lefse.
So I left some food out there after dinner. You know.
It's not the same. It's close though. So lefse is a potato-based, like a tortilla. It's very Scandinavian, Norwegian, and it's generally made by older people right now. They make lefse, and it's usually a little bit bigger of a tortilla, like probably 15 to 16 inches round. And it's really thin. And the way that you can stomach eating it is by smearing butter on it and putting sugar and cinnamon on it. Ooh. Is what a majority people do with it. So there's other things that they can put on it, but that's the most popular way to do it. And it's a very Scandinavian thing. And there's a company up here that sells like rolling pins and stuff that's for rolling it out. And I make lefse sticks for them. Which is actually used for when they're cooking. They actually use it to flip the lefse stick. And it's a stick that's about 2 feet long, about 1.5 inches wide. It's tapered on both sides. So they kind of push it underneath and wiggle it back and forth, and it breaks it loose from the skillet that they cook it on, basically a big round skillet, and then they flip it over. Or not a skillet. What am I thinking of?
Like a griddle?
Yeah, a griddle. That's what it is. It's like a big round griddle. And they use that and flip it back and forth. So I've been prepping those and making some of those for the gentleman that I make them for up here. So, and he sells quite a few of them. He's gone through, I think, probably sold about 500 or 600 of them last year. So,
wow. I just started Googling lefse, and the first thing that comes up is Lefse, Minnesota.
Yes.
So it must be big up there.
It is. It is very big up here. It's a big Norwegian or big Scandinavian area up in Minnesota, and then also in North Dakota. So.
Ah, okay, I see.
So this one.
So what's that? What's rough. That? Looks like there's a hook.
There's a handle on the bottom.
Right.
But this is just a roughed in one. This one's not. I haven't at all. So this is just rough. So this will all be tapered, and basically where you can just slide it underneath the lefse and flip it, because it'd be hard to flip it with a 16-inch wide spatula.
Right, right. Interesting.
So that's interesting. So you put the handle on and all before you taper the blade of it?
Yes.
And how do you go about tapering the blade?
I have a 6x48 inch belt sander. And I'll use that to just kind of rock it back and forth and taper it, and then lift it up and taper the end. So it's mostly I mostly use my sander for it.
Yeah. I'm assuming all your paddles are tapered as well.
Yes, they are.
Yeah, so is that how you taper them, is on the belt sander?
Yes, I finish them off on the sander. I usually use a power hand planer. And then I draw my center line where I want it on the edge of the blade. And then I use the power planer to get close to that area. And then I use my 6x46 to taper it the rest of the way. And then the rest is using orbital sanders.
Wow. That's interesting.
Mm-hmm.
Very cool.
So I found my own method and found my own way to do it. And I changed over. I started using just a regular vise because it's hard to hold a round shaft, like to lock it in a vise. And I was using just a regular woodworking vise, and then I changed over. I made my own vise, and then I was approached by a company called Work IQ, and they make a woodworking vise. They also make some gun avid gun vices. Was kind of what the company branched off and started making some general woodworking and general vices. And they're based out of Minneapolis. And I met the owner of it at a convention, and he asked me if I wanted one. So I took one, and it's got jaws on it that'll actually hold a round, like a 1-inch round shaft on it. So so I've been using that ever since, and I've been loving it. So but pretty much I use mostly power tools.
That's pretty cool, man. I'd love to come up there and watch you make one start to finish. That's just fascinating.
Yeah,
I'm looking at the Work IQ vise. That's pretty nifty.
Yeah, I was approached, and they had a film crew come up during this winter and film me making some stuff and doing some things with it. And so I have some other friends that have been on Instagram and Facebook, and they're like, hey, I've seen your commercial for them quite a bit. So
yeah, that's not a cheap vise, but it looks like it's well built.
It is. If I grab it right now, I lock the pin in it, I will move my workbench before it moves.
Wow. Even with that ball mechanism on it, it's pretty tight, huh?
Yes, it's very tight. There's a clamp on the bottom of it, so you can clamp the ball down, and then there's a pin that you can slide in, and it locks it in the vertical or horizontal position. And it's very, very solid. So
nice.
That's pretty cool.
Also, the owner of the company is a very strong Christian, so that helps me out as well. So
you don't say.
Yeah.
I'm gonna have, if you've got his name, send it to me.
I do.
Yeah.
I will.
Absolutely. Tom, what about you? You make any sawdust?
The only thing I've got to work on my project that I'm making for Maker for St. Jude a little bit, but I haven't had much time. I've been focusing on finishing this French drain system, and then I've had some sign installs. But yeah, that's still what I'm working on in the shop when I have time. But after I get the pipe in, I'll be laying pipe in a couple days, and once I get all that in and get it all filled back in, then I'm gonna have a bunch more shop time. So, yep. How about you?
Nah, only sawdust I'm making is with the circular saw. But no, man. I've talked. We've been talking about getting ducks for a while. We finally got the ducks, and now it's kind of lit a fire under me to get this coop done. And so the coop is done-ish. So I made the pull-up door, and then made a mechanism to latch it and hang it. And today I made the big door on the side. You open up and clean it out and stuff like that. And then I put the roof on. Put the metal roof on. Now I did everything I could reach from the ground. I did screw-wise. I screwed in the metal roof. So I still got to get up on the roof and finish putting screws in it. But I was just running out of time today, so I didn't finish that out. But now, Tom, you've done metal roofs before, haven't you, on different things?
Yeah, on horse barn.
Horse barn. So I didn't know how I was going to cut this stuff. And so I tried many methods. I thought, oh, I'll just snip it with hand snips. Nah, that don't work. And so then I was like, I'll get my angle grinder with a cutoff wheel. That wasn't very good. And so I finally got a metal cutting blade for my jigsaw. I went through 5 blades because they kept like bending and they would snap off trying to cut that stupid metal roof.
Yeah.
Circular saw.
Circular saw. Yeah. I thought about using my circular saw with the metal blade and just doing it that way.
Yeah. And they actually make a special tool. It's kind of like metal snippers that But I mean, unless you do it for a living, I'm not buying one. You know, I just use my circular saw with the metal blade, and it works.
Right. Yeah. So make sure you're wearing safety glasses.
Yes.
Yeah. No kid. The angle grinder was sketchy because I just a normal cutoff wheel, not like a carbide wheel or anything, just a normal, and it was throwing pieces of the. I was like, oh crap, this sucks. So I cut one of them that way, but the roof. So here's the funny part, right? I spent a lot of money on this coop. I'm well into $1,500 plus building this stupid thing because I want to do it right, and it's overbuilt. And my wife and I have decided that if a tornado comes, we're gonna go get in the coop. And so, but I had a guy from church who he owns a construction business. And I was telling him about, I think he does like construction for a investment company that owns like 100 and something houses in his area, in our area. And so he's like the guy, him and his son-in-law go around. And I was saying something to him about putting a roof on. He's like, dude, don't go buy a roof. I've got leftover from all these different projects. And so my roof is red, white, and blue. So there you have it.
Nice.
Because, it's all the same shape, but it was just all free. You know, I've spent so much, and so I put all free metal on there. So, yeah, and he gave me a whole bag of screws too. So of the with the little washers on it or whatever.
Well, you speaking of Ducksville reminded me of something. Like before we started recording, we were talking about like different verbiages and stuff from different areas.
Right.
We were saying I have a little Minnesota accent, and when there's a kids game, it's called Duck Duck what?
Goose.
Right. In Minnesota, it's Duck Duck Gray Duck.
Duck Duck Gray Duck.
No idea. First time we went in to teach children's church at our church, we got done with our lesson. Kids wanted to play a game, and we're like, what game do you want to play? And they're like, Duck Duck Gray Duck. And my wife and I looked at each other and went, okay, let's go. Then when they sat in a circle and they went around and duck, gray duck.
Interesting.
As far as I know, that's the only place in the country that plays it that way.
I guess the goose must have offended somebody, so they changed it to gray duck or something.
It must have been. I don't know. It's the only place I've ever heard of it, but it's.
What's funny is duck and goose hunting is big up there, isn't it?
Very, very.
Yeah, because all the lakes and the water and stuff.
Yeah. Yep. We're right in the flight path for the Canadian migration. So.
Yeah.
Yep.
So it's interesting. Duck, duck, gray duck.
Yeah. So something to think about.
Right. Well, it's funny though, because we've talked about on the podcast before, but all those different sayings in different regions. Like if I'm gonna go out to a restaurant, I'm gonna get a pop for my drink.
Yep.
Right. But some places it's soda pop, some places it's soda, and down south in Tennessee, everything's Coke, no matter what. I remember the first time we went out, and we were with some friends, and they're like, "I'll take a Coke," and the waitress was like, "What kind of Coke?" I thought maybe it's a Diet Coke. No, and they said Mountain Dew. I'm like, wait a second. And then I'll say, I want to pop, right? Or, I'm going to drink pop. And so it's just funny, all those different things in regions. There's actually, so one of my things I love is I pick up on accents and dialects. So we weren't talking about for 30 seconds. And I was like, I hear something, right? There's a guy on YouTube that's done like a 3-part video on how those different accents come into America. It's really fascinating. It talks about why you say a boot that way, and where that comes from, and why, it's really cool. And the different Southern draws and all those different, it's really, really fascinating. But nonetheless, I always found it fun to, because I was always the Northern guy, right? Coming up from the first time I had sweet tea in Tennessee, it was basically sugar with a little bit of flavor water. Like, I was like, holy moly, this stuff is like, you could float, you could float a rock in it. There's so much sugar in there. But everybody does different. And, I'd say, I want an unsweet tea. They'd look at me like I was crazy.
Yep. Oh, yeah. Now they would call everybody, like when we went on a missions trip to St. Louis, and there was a group from, I think, Tennessee, and they kept on calling my wife Miss Debbie. And she's like, I gotta implement that when we go back up to Minnesota. Everybody keeps calling me Miss Debbie.
It's Miss Debbie. Yep.
So she really enjoyed that.
That's funny because, Tom's from the South originally, so.
Oh yeah, you come down south and say you want to pop, somebody gonna slap you upside the head.
Yep. Yeah. I was on the East Coast and we were at a place and I ordered a pop and the lady looked at me and she's like, "You're from the North, aren't you?" And I was like, "Yep, I am." She goes, "You're from the Midwest, aren't you?" And I'm like, "Yes." I'm like, "We're from Minnesota." And she goes, "I'm from Michigan." Then she hold your hand up because Michigan's the mitten state.
Right.
And she pointed her hand where she lived on. So.
Yeah. That's fun. It's funny too, because I was just in Florida for work, and I flew out of Cleveland. It's the not really closest there, but whatever. It's the airport I like. Cleveland has its own dialect. I can hear somebody, and I know they're from Cleveland. I can hear Pittsburgh. Pittsburgh has its own thing. It's really interesting, all the different areas. I can hear Minnesota compared to Wisconsin, or St. Louis has, if you're from St. Louis, you have your own, there's this way that you talk. It's fascinating to me. I love it. And it opens up conversation. So, one of the things as a believer, we're supposed to preach the gospel and reach people. And I find that's one of the ways I do that is I'll hear somebody talking. I'd be like, "You're from Iowa or you're from here." And they're like, "How'd you know that?" I don't know. I could just hear it. It's, it's fun.
Because they're wearing a Hawkeyes t-shirt.
Right. Yeah, they were. It's right here. It says, "I'm from Iowa." I don't know. What's the Very good. Okay. Awesome. Well, Dan, thank you so much. Where can people find you on social media?
Pretty much I'm on Instagram at dan.woodshop. And then you can find me at Dan's Woodshop over on Facebook too. I do have a YouTube channel, but I've got maybe 2 videos on it. And so you'll probably never see anything over there.
Yeah. Now, do you have an Etsy shop or anything people can buy your paddles or whatnot?
I don't have an Etsy shop, but I do have a website. It's danswoodshop.mn.com.
Okay.
So danswoodshopmn.com.
danswoodshopmn.com. Awesome.
Yep. Yeah.
Well, thank you so much for coming on and sharing your story and talking about all things life and testimony, and we appreciate it.
Absolutely. I enjoyed it, and thank you for doing the podcast. I love listening to it whenever it comes out every week.
Yeah, we appreciate you listening.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, until next week, I'm Will from Flat Woodworks.
And I'm Tom from Mountain Valley Maker.